Hello, this is Xavier from Jobos Tools, and today I'm going to show you some of the Docker tooling that we have for Eclipse Mars and that ships in Developer Studio 9 Beta 1 that was just released last week. In today's demo, we are going to run two Docker containers. The first one will run Postgre, and the second one will run WildFly with some specific settings. Then we will deploy a Quickstart application on WildFly, which will connect to the Postgre database. So the first thing we need to do is open the new Docker Explorer view. We don't have any connection yet, so we can click on this link. And we now have this wizard, which is going to try to find some existing settings to connect to a Docker engine. This can be something like Unix socket if we run on Linux, or it can be based on environment variables if we run on something else, such as boot to Docker, or if we want to connect to a Docker machine, for example. If we don't have such parameters available, that is, no Unix socket or no environment variables in the scripting file or when we started Eclipse, we can check this box and override or specify some custom settings. Now we can use here default settings, and we can click on test connection, and since we can connect here, we can click on finish. So we now have this new boot to Docker node in the view, which we can expand, see some containers, but we don't have any yet, and see images, and we have a few of them, including Postgre and a custom one, WildFly Postgres, which I will explain in a few seconds. So let's start with the Postgre container. Let's select the Postgre image here and run the wizard. So this wizard is going to let us specify all the settings we want when we run the container. We can specify a name, let's say Postgre demo. Otherwise, Docker will provide a random name. By default, we are going to expose all ports. But if we want to specify some specific values for the port we want to expose, we can uncheck this box here. And by default, the wizard will take the same values, but we can override these values and specify something else. Here we just want to use the default port. We don't have any container to link. We're not going to mount anything on the host for now, but we are going to create a couple of environment variables. The first one will be Postgre user name. It will be something like Postgre. So this will allow us to create a Postgre user when the container starts. And we will give user a password to this user. It will be Postgre as well. Let's click on finish and start the container. The next thing to do is run WildFly in a container. But WildFly has no support for Postgre by default, so we need to make our own container based on our own image. The next thing is to run WildFly in a container. But WildFly has no support for Postgre, so we need to make our own image with some custom changes on WildFly's default image. The next thing we want to do is run WildFly in a container. But WildFly has no support for PostgreSQL, so we need to make our own image. We can use this kind of Docker file here, which starts from an existing image, JBoss WildFly 8.2.0.final, and we are going to apply the following changes. First, we are going to create a module, and we are going to copy some files from this project here. We are going to copy module.xml, which will declare a new PostgreSQL module, which will include this jar file, which is here. Those files are going to be copied into the image. Then we are going to replace standalone.xml with our own flavor of standalone.xml. This standalone.xml includes a new data source, PostgreSQL DS here, which uses a lot of environment variables. as you can see, all these environment variables are prefixed with Postgres. Then we will add a few other changes, including declaring a volume here, which is a folder or the directory in which we should deploy our application. We'll create an admin user here. We'll expose port 8787, which is the debugging port. And we will use this command line as a replacement of the default one. Especially, you can see that we open management port to any host, and we include the debug file for remote debugging. Now that we have this Docker file, we can do something like this. Run as build image. So what I'm showing here is not already part of Eclipse Mars. This is a work in progress, and it's probably going to change a bit in the next few days or few weeks. But we want to provide some tooling in Eclipse to let users build images from an existing Docker file. So I'm going to give this name here. It will be WildFly-Postgres. And we are going to select this option, always remove intermediate containers. And when we click on finish, this is going to build our own image, which we see just appear here with the same ID, starting with 858. So now that we have our image, we can run it. So let's select it here in the Docker Explorer view. And once again, run image opens this wizard. We can specify the name for the container, WildFly demo. We can see that we have now our custom command line, including the --debug flag. Once again, we are going to publish all exposed ports using container port on the host with the same values. And we are going to link this container with the Postgre container that we've created just before. So let's take it here in the drop-down list and use Postgre as the alias. This value is very important. This alias is what is going to be used to make environment variables that we've seen before in the standalone.xml. So you have to be very careful about the alias. Here we are going to mount this volume, this custom volume, which is where WildFly is going to look for deployments, and we are going to mount it on the host directory, which will be a custom directory. Okay, and we don't have any environment variables to specify for this container, so we can click on finish and run this container. Okay, so the container started, and we have two data sources, including one for PostgreSQL DS. So it's now time to create the application that we will deploy on WildFly. So let's go to Jabber Central. And let's take the famous HTML5 project. So it's a Maven archetype that is going to be imported as a project in Eclipse. In this project, we need to change the persistent settings. Because as you can see from this persistent.xml file here, by default the project is going to use this kitchen sink HTML5 mobile Quickstart DS, which is defined in this data source file here. But we don't need something like this. What we want to use instead is the Postgre data source that we specified in standalone.xml. So let's first remove this file. Let's go back to standalone.xml and use this value here, PostgreSQL DS, and let's use it here instead. At the same time, I like to set this value to true so I can see what's happening on Hibernate side. The next step is to create a server adapter to deploy our application. So let's click on this link and let's select WildFly 8. Now we have to be very careful with this value, server hostname. As we run with boot to Docker, this cannot be the local host. It has to be boot to Docker IP address. On the second page, we are going to check this option to say that the server lifecycle is externally managed. Actually, the server adapter that we are going to create now is not going to stop and start WildFly. It's just going to assume it is running and deploy some application on it. Here, we should not specify anything yet. We are just going to create the server adapter. So let's open the server configuration. As we've seen, this server is externally managed. And since we don't have any module or application deployed on WildFly, we can change this value here. We can use a custom deploy folder. And we are going to use a different value instead. We are going to use the value that we specified when we run the container. We can save this. And we can click on Start to connect to the server. Now, we can add and remove our application and click on Finish. We can add our application and click on Finish. So what's happening here is server adapter is going to deploy to publish our application in a host directory, which is mounted as a volume for Docker container running WildFly, and WildFly is going to see the changes and it's going to deploy the application. And now the application should be available from the web browser. I have one entry by default here, and I can add myself using that. And my phone number, I can register myself. And I can see some activity. And if I go to the data source explorer here, I created a PostgreSQL on Docker data source with the following settings. So this needs to be changed to the I can test my connection. Okay. So here I'm connecting on PostgreSQL running on the first container that we've created before. And I can see that I have a table here for which I can extract a few sample contents. And I can see that I have my data available, the one I just created. The last thing we are going to do is remote debugging. So for this, we're going to do the following thing. Launch a debug configuration, create a new Java remote application, and we can do something like this. We can select our project and connect to boot to Docker using its IP address and port 8787, which is the one we exposed before. You can click on debug. The debugger is going to attach to WildFly running in Docker. And now what I can do is go to this endpoint, put a breakpoint. If I come back here and click on refresh members, I can see that my breakpoint is it, just as if WildFly was running on my host, except it's running inside Docker in a container. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye.